Kamala Harris's 2028 presidential odds have taken a significant hit, according to a new poll from Atlas Intel, an A+ rated pollster that shows former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg surging into a clear lead. In this survey of 930 registered Democrats, Buttigieg now sits at 31%, gaining 4 points since April. He's followed by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 19%, up about 3.5 points over the same period. Meanwhile, former Vice President and 2024 Democratic nominee Kamala Harris has dropped 7.5 points, now polling at just 16.6%, a distant third. Also registering support in this poll are New Jersey Senator Cory Booker and 3 prominent governors, Gavin Newsom of California, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. This may be just one poll, but the takeaway is clear: Harris is losing ground fast. Meanwhile, in the Republican version of this same poll, we see Vice President J.D. Vance also losing significant support, down more than 22 points since April, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio surging 10 points up to 18.7% among more than 1,000 registered Republicans surveyed for this one. Vance and Rubio are followed by Donald Trump Jr., Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and potential future Ohio Governor Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the only other candidate polling above 5%. We'll take a deeper dive into the Republican field later in the video. But first, let's return to the Democrats, where the race appears far more open at this point. Again, Harris is rapidly losing whatever momentum she had. According to a weighted average of all publicly available polls compiled by the team at Race to the White House, she still holds a narrow lead at 24%, followed by Buttigieg at 20% and Ocasio-Cortez at 14%. But if we scroll down here to the trendline graph, Harris has already lost nearly 15 points from her peak earlier this year, and if Atlas Intel's latest numbers are any indication, she could lose her frontrunner status entirely in the coming months. There are likely 2 main reasons for her decline. First, speculation is mounting that Harris may instead run for governor of California, where she would instantly become the frontrunner to replace the term-limited Gavin Newsom. A decision is expected by the end of the summer. Second, and closely related, is a growing perception that Harris may not be the strongest contender in what's shaping up to be a crowded and competitive primary. She would need to convince Democrats that she still represents the future of the party, despite her loss to Donald Trump in 2024. Complicating that is her close association with President Joe Biden, whose final years in office were increasingly defined by concerns over his age and mental acuity. That connection could become more of a liability than an asset. Harris also hasn't proven herself a strong primary candidate. There was no competitive primary in 2024. She effectively inherited the nomination after Biden stepped aside, and many still remember her 2020 campaign, which began with high expectations and strong media buzz, only to fizzle out months before Iowa. Now in 2025, despite having just been the party's nominee and enjoying nearly universal name recognition, she's pulling in less than a quarter of Democratic support. Right behind her in most early polls is Pete Buttigieg, who first rose to national prominence in 2020 as Mayor Pete, unexpectedly winning the Iowa caucuses, alongside Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, currently polling in third. These two clearly lead the Democratic field when it comes to online presence. Ocasio-Cortez commands a massive Twitter following, and clips of Buttigieg speaking frequently rack up millions of views across social media platforms. So it's no surprise that AOC and Buttigieg, along with Harris, are currently the most popular Democrats in terms of net favorability, meaning the gap between those who view them favorably versus unfavorably. According to a recent Yale Youth poll, which surveyed 2,000 Democratic primary voters of all ages, AOC tops the list with 75% viewing her favorably and just 13% unfavorably. Kamala Harris comes in second with a net favorability rating of 59.4%, while Buttigieg places third at 49.5%. Given those numbers, it makes sense to see all three hovering near the top of early polling. That said, it's actually Gavin Newsom who currently holds the best odds of winning the Democratic nomination, according to the prediction markets. With more than $6.5 million invested in the market so far, the California governor leads the field, albeit narrowly, with a 14% chance of securing the nomination. That may not sound like much, but it's the highest mark any candidate has reached since the market opened, driven in large part by the extensive media exposure Newsom has received during the ongoing protests in Los Angeles. It's worth noting, though, that his odds are likely inflated at this early stage due to the widespread expectation that he will, in fact, run, and that if he does, he'll enter the race with major endorsements and an enormous fundraising haul right out of the gate. Meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez bring more uncertainty. AOC only just turned 35, the constitutional minimum age to run for president, and some Democrats may feel she's too young or better suited to wait her turn. And Buttigieg, despite his strong national profile, has yet to hold statewide office or serve in Congress, raising questions in some corners about his governing experience. Another reason Newsom is currently topping the betting markets is his home field advantage. As governor of California, he's based in a Super Tuesday state that not only votes early, but awards nearly 500 delegates, almost double the total of any other state. California is also one of just 2 states for which we currently have state-level Democratic primary polling, and Newsom is leading in both, followed by Harris, Buttigieg, and AOC. With all of that being said, there's a chance that none of the names currently dominating the headlines will remain at the top by the time we get to the first debate stage. Remember, 3 years before the 2008 election, Barack Obama was still a little-known first-term senator from Illinois. And in 2016, the idea of Donald Trump becoming a serious presidential contender was literally laughed off, even after he began polling well in early primary states. So, yes, names like Maryland Governor Wes Moore, Kentucky's Andy Beshear, or even Stephen A. Smith or someone like Mark Cuban should be taken seriously. Personally, I think Maryland Governor Wes Moore is one of the most compelling dark horses in the entire field. Meanwhile, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear has clearly gained traction within the party's more moderate, pragmatic wing, especially among Democrats looking for a generational shift in leadership. But to be honest, if you gave me $100 right now and told me to place it on a single candidate to win the nomination, I genuinely wouldn't know where to put it. Your guess is as good as mine. And that's exactly what makes this so interesting. There are even a few names not currently listed in the betting markets that could absolutely find themselves in the mix over time. Think Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, and Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff, assuming he survives next year's re-election bid, or maybe even Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate for governor of Virginia, assuming she wins this November. Now, shifting gears to the Republican field, things are a lot less crowded for now. The prevailing assumption is that Vice President J.D. Vance will pick up the torch to lead Trump's agenda into a younger, post-Trump future. If he runs, and especially if he receives Trump's endorsement, he's the overwhelming favorite to win the Republican nomination. That said, if Trump surprises everyone by not endorsing him or endorses someone else, that would completely scramble the dynamics. According to the markets, the next most likely nominee after Vance is National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard. Her odds have been rising, likely due to her public hints that she won't rule out a presidential bid. After Gabbard comes Trump himself, with investors hedging on the slim but real possibility that he attempts a third-term run despite constitutional limits. He's followed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Donald Trump Jr., and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, all of whom currently sit above 5% in the odds, nothing to scoff at. In terms of polling, Vance dominates most surveys, averaging around 42% in Republican primary fields that don't include Trump. He's followed by Don Jr., Rubio, DeSantis, RFK Jr., Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy. But in the most recent Atlas Intel poll, again from an A+ rated pollster, we see Secretary of State Marco Rubio capitalizing on the national spotlight he's had over the past few months. He's now polling within 20 points of the sitting vice president, so we may be looking at a more competitive GOP primary than many expected. Still, it all comes down to one question: who does Trump endorse? Right now, the public seems to believe Vance is the likely heir apparent, hence his commanding lead in the prediction markets, but at just 42%, his odds are no better than a coin flip. And that's not quite as strong as you might expect for a sitting vice president in control of the party machinery. Anyway, that just about does it for me. As always, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and let me know what other videos or topics you'd like to see me cover next. That's it for today's video. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the content. Check out more of my videos right here. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.